election debates. Joining me in the studio, and you can of course watch us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube and the LBC website at lbc.co.uk. Our panellists tonight are Paul Scully, the Vice Chairman of the Conservative Party, MP for Sutton and Cheam. Alistair Carmichael is the Liberal Democrat Chief Whip and MP for Orkney and Shetland. He's come a long way tonight. And Lance Foreman, Brexit Party MEP candidate, and Seb Dance, who is also, his Labour MEP candidate. And you've been an MEP since when, Seb?
2014.
You enjoyed it?
I loved it, yeah. It's great fun. Especially the last 3 years.
Well, quite. I remember seeing you in a documentary, which was quite entertaining.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to give you the first question. I'm going to give you, it's come from someone on Twitter. You may have seen it, I don't know. Two of you will be able to answer this very easily, the other two possibly less so. Can you get your guest tonight to state unequivocally, are they a Remain party or a Brexit party? Alistair Carmichael.
Liberal Democrats are a Remain party. We're unashamed of being a Remain party, and now as you see the polls emerging, we are the largest Remain party that is available to those who really want to say something about remaining as part of the European Union at this election.
25% of your voters, though, voted Leave. What do you expect them to do?
I think that's something that you will find across all the parties. The fact that we have a split within our voters is nothing greatly to be surprised about. It will be up to them. But if they are voting for us, then they will know that they are voting for a Remain party. The Liberal Democrats are, as I say, the largest Remain party in this election.
And as the Chief Whip, when you heard that Ed Davies, constituency chairman, had defected to the Brexit party, what was your reaction?
Well, I hadn't actually heard that until you told me, and funnily enough, Ed
really?
hasn't mentioned it to me. But
well, I hope I've got that right.
People come and go between parties. That happens all the time. I don't think there's much to see here, really. I would say that there's been a couple of Change UK candidates, one from the Southwest and one from Scotland, who've come out and said that they are voting for the Liberal Democrats, although they're on the ballot paper on the Change UK list, because they think that is tactically the best thing for somebody who cares about remaining in the EU to do.
Lance Foreman, it's an easy one for you to start off with.
Let me think about it for a second. Yes, we are unequivocally the Leave party. But as far as we're concerned, the story has moved on now. And this is not just about Leave or Remain, because we had that argument and we've had that vote and people voted to leave. And what we see this as now is a vote about democracy. We are the only party that people can vote for if they believe that you have to uphold that referendum vote that took place on the 23rd of June 2016. If you believe that that vote should be upheld, you have to vote for the Brexit party.
Would you prefer to leave with a deal or without a deal?
I would have preferred to have left with a deal, a sort of free trade deal, but we've passed that point. I don't have any fears whatsoever about leaving without a deal, and I think if we do leave without a deal, it won't be long before some deal can be constructed between Britain and the EU. But, I have to say that, the argument really has moved on. I was chatting to a young friend of my 18-year-old daughter a few days ago, and I was saying to her, I'm standing for this thing. This is your very first ever vote. How are you going to be voting? And I was completely taken aback. She said, well, I don't support coming out of the EU, but I'm actually going to be voting for the Brexit party. And I said, well, why is that? She said, well, at school we were sort of taught that coming out of the EU is not going to be that great. That's what they were taught. But she said that we were also taught the importance of democracy. And if you make a vote and then the government doesn't listen to what you're voting on, what's the point in having the vote in the first place? So I was really taken aback.
Okay. Paul Scully, Vice Chairman of the Conservative Party, I'm sure you will have had lots of feedback from your party supporters and members on this issue. Is the Conservative Party a Remain party or Brexit party?
No, it's a Brexit party. It's something that
will come as a surprise to Dominic Grieve.
Well, the 90% of Conservative MPs have voted to leave the EU in Parliament this year. I voted 3 times now for an agreement which allows us to leave the political institutions.
And you did vote Leave in the referendum?
I campaigned for Leave. I actually voted for the referendum party in '97, which what brought me into politics in the first place, which is actually why I'm glad we had a referendum, and I'm glad we've been able to, if we can get something through, to leave the political institutions, to stop the big membership fees, to end freedom of movement, and to be able to eventually do our own trade deals. But clearly, the difference, I think, between us and Lance, although, like Lance, I don't mind leaving with no deal as long as we've tried everything we can to get a deal so we can lead an orderly fashion.
But given that you describe the Conservative Party as a Brexit party, why has it taken 3 years for us not to leave the EU?
Because, as I say, I think it's actually not the government that's lost its head, it's Parliament that's lost its head. When you've got 90% of the Conservative Party that voted for the withdrawal agreement, that in order to make us leave, there are a small number of people on either side of our party that are not voting for that. There is also the Labour Party, who is split between the leadership and other groups. Some want a second referendum. The leadership just wants a general election. The Lib Dems, as you heard, just want to remain and unpick the referendum in its entirety, as do the SNP.
Seb Dance, I guess in some ways this is a difficult one for you because you are unashamedly pro-EU. You want to stay in. And yet your party leadership gives a little bit of a different message, doesn't it?
Well, I think our message is quite clear when expressed through the policy, which is obviously first we want a general election. If we can't get that, then we should put a deal to the British people. And that is clear in our manifesto. It's clear in our literature as well. I find this idea, by the way, that this is about democracy very compelling. It is about democracy.
Yes.
But the idea that people voted for no deal is a complete and utter fraud. People didn't vote for no deal. They voted for a better deal. They voted for more money, more investment in public services. They voted for a stronger economy, more job opportunities. And what no deal represents is the complete opposite of that. So we should have a vote on the reality of Brexit. Put that to the British people against Remain.
I'm sure we'll come on to a second referendum a little bit later, but in terms of is the Labour Party a Remain party or a Brexit party, what's your answer to that?
Well, clearly there's a split in the country and there's a slight split in the Labour Party, but we are 85% Remain and I would say 15% Leave. And any party that seeks to govern has to represent everybody in the country, and it's clear that there is a range of views on this in the country. But predominantly, when you look at the membership, when you look at the members of Parliament, certainly when you look at the MEP candidates, we are overwhelmingly Remain.
But politically, it's quite a difficult one, isn't it? Because of course, in the south of England, particularly in London, you have got a Remain majority among Labour voters, but you don't have to travel too far north to find that's very different.
We have a Remain majority among northern Labour voters as well.
Well, there are 5 million Labour voters that voted to leave.
But the vast majority of Labour voters voted Remain. My advice to both Leave and Remain voters is to look at what we have now. Did people really vote for this level of utter chaos? Did they vote for paralysis in our political discourse, for our economy to stall, for investment to dry up? No, of course they didn't. So I would ask people, whether you voted Leave or Remain, look at the reality of this. And just as we haven't seen any real anger at the prospect of these European elections, I don't think we'll see any real anger at the prospect of a vote.
Andrew Adonis, one of your fellow MEP candidates, sitting in that very chair, said to me last September,
hallowed chair.
Well, indeed, a very hallowed chair. Many have undergone a grilling in that particular chair. He said to me last September that he advised any Labour Brexit supporting voters to vote for a party that would deliver Brexit, and that wasn't Labour. Now, you have similar views to him on the EU. You are on his wing of this debate, I would venture to suggest. Do you agree with him on that?
No, I would never advocate not voting for the Labour Party. And the simple case is, if you are a Leave voter, you can vote for the Labour Party, even if you disagree with my position that we should stay in the European Union. As I say, there will be an opportunity, I think, it's inevitable, but certainly we're still campaigning for it, for the reality of Brexit to go against remaining in the European Union in a public vote. And I am very, very confident that a large number of the 17.4 million people who voted to leave the European Union will look at the reality of what Brexit now is and have a very different view.
Let me put another question to you before we come to the calls. If you want to speak to our panel, the number 0345 6060 973. And don't forget, you can watch us on our website at lbc.co.uk, at LBC on Twitter, the LBC Facebook page or YouTube channel. In terms of, well, let me ask the two candidates here, because two of you are not candidates, but let me ask the two candidates here. If you're elected to the European Parliament, what do you hope to achieve by being an MEP? Because it's a bit of an odd thing to do, to stand, particularly for you, Lance Foreman, to stand in an election which A, you didn't want to have in the first place, and B, you hope you hope you never take up your seat.
I do.
What's your aim in this?
Well, I think there are two aspects to it, Ian. There's obviously what happens at home and there's what happens abroad. And at home, I think we're trying to send a message. after 3 years of complete chaos and a complete shambles in Parliament, the people are getting angry like me. This is why normal people, business people, academics, normal people have come forward and they've said, look, enough is enough of the political class just playing games with this. We have to sort this mess out. So people have come forward to express their frustration and anger. And I think that the results of the vote on the 23rd of May will display that. But who knows what might happen in Europe too? There's Eurosceptic parties right across Europe, in France, in Germany, in Italy, and in Spain.
I'm going to actually come on to that in a minute. But in terms of if you get elected,
yes,
why don't all Brexit Party candidates commit to effectively doing it for free and not taking their salaries in the European Parliament? That would make quite a big statement, wouldn't it?
Well, maybe some of them will do that. I don't know.
Will you?
I don't have a problem because I'm not doing it for the salary. I'm doing it because I want to make a stand. I want to say to the politicians on behalf of the people that this is really about democracy and that the story has moved on. There are people that voted to remain that are just as angry at the way this has happened, and I'll tell you why that is. When the referendum took place, it wasn't nearly as binary as it's made out now. I had a lot of Remain friends that said to me, my heart's this way and my head's that way. And I think a lot of people felt like that. And I think the mistake was that once the referendum had gone ahead, we should have just dealt with it very quickly and just moved to that lead position.
Doesn't really matter, though. That's all sort of by the by, isn't it? It's gone. We're really looking to what happens now. Seb, same question to you. What would you... I mean, you've been in the European Parliament for 5 years. You know how the place works. Even if you only have a few weeks there, what can you achieve in that time?
Well, obviously, first, I hope it's not a few weeks, but I think when we do go back...
So you are the party of Remain?
Yes. We have to go in there with the attitude that we're there for the long haul. Take, for example, if we were to remain in the European Union, and obviously that's something I would continue to campaign for, then if we at the beginning say to ourselves, we're not in this for the long run, almost apologising for being there, then we will shoot ourselves fatally in the foot from the very beginning. But I disagree with this idea that it's just about sending a symbol. Yes, of course, symbols are important, and often elections are a very blunt way and rare way for people to express a symbol. But this is about electing members of the European Parliament, and the composition of that Parliament is incredibly important. It's about the future direction of the European Union. It's about the composition of the Commission. And on that, there are a whole range of things that we, as part of the Labour Party, as part of a bigger group, the Socialists and Democrats in the European Parliament, can do and contribute to the future of Europe.
But it's irrelevant if we shouldn't be in that Parliament at all, because 3 years ago people voted that Britain shouldn't be in it.
Yeah, but as I say, the reality of Brexit is vastly different to the Brexit that was conjured up in 2016. But look, you can't deny that. You can't deny that what is on the table now, whether it be the deal that the government has negotiated or, in fact, no deal, neither of those are what people voted for.
It might be the Brexit in your head, but you have to.
Those are the two options: no deal or the Prime Minister's deal.
You have to accept that the majority of people voted to leave the EU. We might not know what type of leave that was, but the minority voted to remain. The minority voted that the Remainers lost.
But you also have to accept that there were reasons.
Also voted for a party manifesto which talked about leaving the single market, leaving the customs union, and respecting the referendum, as did the Conservative.
But manifesto. It didn't talk about job losses, and it didn't talk about stalled investment.
But nonetheless, it did talk about those two fundamental things.
It didn't talk about ending key freedoms.
We have to go to a break. We're going to come to your calls in a moment. We'll also have Ask Me Anything questions, where each of the candidates asks the other a question, so it takes me out of the equation altogether, so I can sit back for a few minutes. It's 7:48.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast, weekday mornings from 7, LBC.
I find it gut-wrenchingly nauseous to see how MPs are queuing up to pour a tub all over Jeremy Kyle and other shows. Do the shows need to be looked at? Yes, they do. But can I suggest something else that needs to be looked at? There's a story in the paper today of a grieving mother who claimed killing of her teenage son on the disastrous probation privatisation service, which is now being overturned, all down to that parliamentary decision, because of a system brought in by this government, by these MPs. Why don't you put your own gut-wrenchingly nauseous, vomit-inducing house in order before you decide to tell ITV or others how to make shows?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With Xero, get your business digital ready with Xero accounting software.
LBC.
Imagine getting all kinds of rewards just by going about your everyday shopping. Earn points every time you spend, then use your points to get the things you actually want. Filling up at the petrol station could lead to getting your hands on the latest fashion, and supermarket checkout could even take you to airport check-in. Use points to get whatever it is you want. Let's make life more rewarding with the American Express Preferred Rewards Gold Credit Card. Don't live life without it. Representative 57.6% APR variable. Annual fee applies after the first year. Terms apply. 18 plus, subject to approval. Search Amex Gold.
The methods used by criminals have evolved. Your business is now 9 times more likely to be a victim of cybercrime than burglary. With Hiscox CyberClear, you're covered for all cyber threats, even the ones that don't exist yet. Search Hiscox Cyber Insurance.
Out of bed and... Slippers on, breakfast cooked, lunch packed.
Darling, where am I?
Keys are on the side. Get dressed, shirt on, the right way, leave the house, pop to Costa, order a coffee and... relax with a deliciously smooth cappuccino. Escape the morning rush with your favourite coffee. Visit your local Costa Coffee today.
Psst! Did you know that Pimlico Plumbers have an utterly fabulous 24-hour service for plumbing, heating, drains, roofing, electrics, appliances, carpentry and building? Whatever your predicament, Pimlico Plumbers can send a friendly face to your door within the hour. Shh! And just between us, their work even comes with a 12-month guarantee. They aren't just any old tradesmen, they're Pimlico Plumbers, and they're always available on 0207 928 8888 or at pimlicoplumbers.com.
Right now at Vodafone, enjoy 4 times more data on the brilliant iPhone XR and other pay monthly phones. Get more tunes pumping, get more FaceTimes rolling, get more apps apping, more maps mapping, more emojis emojiing, and more box set binging in stunning HD.
That's 4 times more data with 60 gig for the price of 15 on a range of pay monthly phones, including the brilliant iPhone XR. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone. For terms and exclusions, see vodafone.co.uk.
We're coming to you live with this year's stunning spring collection. First, here's the life-ready Vauxhall Crossland X with a stylish two-tone roof, followed by the dynamic Mocha X, striking LED headlights, and the bold, powerful Grandland X, simply stunning in topaz blue. Top models, fabulous offers. The Vauxhall Network Q approved used SUV event. Try them on for size from the 10th to the 31st of May at your local Vauxhall Network Q retailer. Search Network Q. Features and availability may differ. Participating retailers only. T's and C's and exclusions apply.
Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's 8 minutes to 8. Before we go to your calls, I'm going to ask one more question myself, and I think it's going to be a really interesting night when the results come in on Sunday. What is it, the 27th? Is it 26th? And my prediction is that a lot of populist parties, whether from the left or the right, are going to make massive gains in the European Parliament, and that there might well be a third of the seats that these parties occupy. I want to know, what do you attribute the rise of populism across Europe to? Lance Foreman.
The main reason why I've been supporting the whole Brexit argument is because I'm very worried about the future direction of Europe. You know, I've talked and answered questions on bureaucracy and so on and so forth, but for me, the real threat here is the direction of Europe. And if you look at Europe now, there's more extremism across right and left wing that there's been at any time since World War II.
Why?
I'll tell you why. It all stems from the single currency. Everything comes back to that. Economics trumps politics. It always does. You know, if you look at the Soviet Union and the reason that collapsed, it wasn't because the communist philosophy was wrong. It was because people were starving and there were bread queues. And there's a fundamental problem with the single currency, and that is that it creates a dependency culture because you haven't got the flexibility of an exchange rate to allow economies to rebalance. And so you have to have transfers of wealth from the richer country to the poorer country, and that creates, as I say, dependency, and it creates a resentment. It's also created massive unemployment, particularly youth unemployment across Europe. And you start getting this resentment building up, and then you get new rules that are put in place because For example, the EU's had to implant new leadership into Greece and Italy and so on. And resentment builds extremism, and ultimately extremism leads to chaos. And I always believed, this is not a new thing, I've believed this for over 15 years since the single currency came in, that it is a very dangerous road because you don't have an escape valve of the floating exchange rate. So for me, that is the problem with the EU. Okay. It's a single currency.
Yeah. Alistair Carmichael.
It's complex. I mean, I think it has a lot to do with the impact of globalisation, something that even now we're not really getting to grips with. And, globalisation is, in my view, an inevitability, but you have to accept the fact that for a lot of people at the bottom of the economic food chain in the developed world, it has been really difficult, and it brought difficult change for them. The why you could, maybe one day we'll all sit down and write our PhD theses about this. I think for us as politicians, what actually matters is, confronted with that reality, how do we respond to it? And, for me as a Liberal,
is the rise of populism, has it happened because we, the major parties in different countries, haven't responded to it properly?
There are almost certainly parts of that in this country. I think it has been the fact that our own political system has desperately needed modernisation for decades now, and it hasn't had it. I think that is, you've got Labour voters in the north of England and the central belt of Scotland previously who were sitting in safe Labour seats with little engagement from their party, and that was why when you came along with referendums in 2014 and 2016, people saw that for a moment, hey, this really is energising because it matters how I vote. So I think that's one of the things we have to learn. But how are we going to respond to it? Are we going to see the rise of nationalism? Are we going to see the really unpleasant rise in hate crime that you saw after the Brexit vote in 2016 and say, oh, this is all awfully difficult? Are you going to stand up and say, actually, you know what? Freedom of movement, immigration, these are not bad things. These are not something that they should be scared of. This is something that is good for our economy and that offers us all opportunities for the future. That's why young people are the people who are really energised by this debate, because they have been brought up in that world. People like myself in their 50s are maybe having a bit more trouble catching up.
Before we come to our Conservative and Labour Party representatives, let's just hear from Nick in Sutton, because you've got a question on this, haven't you, Nick?
Yeah, my question is that, in my opinion, the three major political parties are responsible for the rise in populism because they don't address the issues of everybody, the man in the street, and also they tend to ignore the 30 or 40% of people who've got a habit of not voting. When the three main parties go out polling, they don't bother knocking on doors with people that don't vote or they think they won't get on with. And this was the arrogance that led the main parties to believe that Brexit would never happen.
OK, Nick, I'm going to leave it there because I wanted to squeeze these two answers in before we go to the 8 o'clock news. Paul Scully from the Conservatives.
If Nick's on my side of Sutton, if he texts me his address, I'll go knocking on his door quite happily, actually. No, I think actually if you're talking about populism around Europe, there's a load of different things. I mean, Lance was right in terms of the economy. We heard from Alistair about the other complexities, but actually immigration in the south and the centre of Europe is really key when you're talking about the Mediterranean migration crisis with people coming over from Syria and the like, and Libya and those kind of places.
Never mind
where the pressure of coming. Yeah, exactly. But so there's been a bit of a perfect storm that's rising populism in those areas. And actually what that begs the question is, when you are talking about the Remain side of the argument, what are you actually remaining in? The status quo is not the status quo. The Europe that you're going to have in a few years' time will not be the Europe that we had in 2016, and it's that sense of development.
Britain. Right, it's not the single currency because Poland doesn't have the single currency, Hungary doesn't have the euro, Britain doesn't have the euro. Clearly there's something more complex going on here, and what Alistair was talking about, the technological revolution that we're going through, the change in the world of work, the way in which we communicate with each other, a lot of people are frightened. It really pains me to hear the Tory party kind of picking up some of this and saying, oh yeah, it's immigration in the southern Mediterranean. This is exactly that process.
Well, if you go to Slovenia and Slovakia,
yeah, but
and you've got 10% of their population coming through. That's what's
you're
causing those
identifying
issues.
the fear, and you're attributing it to the fact that people are fleeing whatever it be, war or, as Alistair says, the effects of climate change increasingly, and we'll see much, much more of that in the future. The reality is the world is changing incredibly fast. And yes, Nick, you're right. Some of the main political parties have not been addressing it properly in terms of what the solutions are to tackle those changes and to connect it with people's real fears and real insecurities. But I'm afraid just labelling it as a problem to do with others, whether they be people who've moved in because they come from a different country or they have a different religion or anything else, that's what populism does. It's simplistic and it doesn't solve the problem.
Well, no, what is simplistic is to actually talk about the fact that you can't dismiss the effect of immigration on a country like Slovenia, which I'm not blaming the immigrants themselves. Clearly, they're not moving around the world.
So we need to deal with the causes, with the famines, with the wars.
Absolutely,
with
but you asked about the rise of
populism. Will never deal with those causes.
If you've got a country like Slovenia with a population of 2 million, when they had 200,000 people literally walking through the farms,
which is why we need European cooperation.
You can understand the concern, the fear, and yes, it needs to be tackled.
We need to work across borders.
A proper
disintegrating the EU,
but nonetheless, populism has risen as a result.
We will continue with this very well-mannered and polite debate, and much more polite than the debate we had last night with 4 females in the studio, I have to say. But then the night is yet young. We'll take some more of your calls and questions in a moment. It's 8 o'clock. News headlines.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, Theresa May is going to set out a timetable for when she'll stand down as Prime Minister after MPs vote on her Brexit deal for a 4th time next month. She's had a long meeting with the 1922 committee of Tory backbenchers, will now agree a departure date with them in June. Former Conservative Party Chairman Grant Shapps has told LBC it is the right outcome from today's talks.
It's been quite a long time in coming, obviously, and also one that does at least provide a sort of degree of dignity. It still means that Theresa May can announce the timing rather than it being announced to her. But it was pretty clear that her options were, of course, quite limited.
While former Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson's confirmed he's got his eye on the job. He's told an audience in Manchester he'll, of course, put himself forward once a leadership race starts. Sky's political correspondent Lewis Goodall's told LBC Mr Johnson's remarks shouldn't surprise anyone.
The man has been running to be Prime Minister for a very long time. It's a man who, when he was a child, that's what they want. What do you want to do when you grow up? And he said, I want to be world king. It's a man that ambition seeps from every pore. So it's not a great surprise, but it is, further confirmation, if anyone needed, that the Conservative leadership contest is happening unofficially. And depending on what Graham Brady says, it could be happening officially sooner than we thought.
We are just hearing 3 British citizens and someone from South Africa have been killed in a small plane crash on the outskirts of Dubai. The Civil Aviation Authority there says it happened near the airport and it was a UK-registered aircraft. The inquest into the London Bridge terror attacks heard an off-duty nurse was stabbed in the neck after she tried to help one of the victims. Helen Kennett told the hearing at the Old Bailey she confronted one of the terrorists outside a restaurant on the evening of June the 3rd, 2017. 8 people were killed in the van and knife attack. There's some reassurance for British steelworkers tonight. The company's announced it's got the backing of its key stakeholders, including shareholders and lenders, and its operations will continue as normal. Earlier in the week, it asked for another £75 million taxpayer loan to stay afloat. And a restaurant in Manchester has admitted accidentally serving a customer a £4,500 bottle of red wine when they'd ordered one worth £260. Hawksmoor's told the member of staff responsible to keep their chin up and accepted that one-off mistakes do happen. The LBC Markets report the FTSE 100s ended the day up 56 points at 73.53. The pound buys $1.27 and €1.16. LBC weather largely dry for most of the UK tonight, but with mist and fog patches possible in eastern Scotland and northern England. Showery rain will be moving westwards with a low of 5 degrees. Then tomorrow, a mix of sunny spells and showers and a high of 20 degrees Celsius. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Rachel Garish.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 3 minutes past 8. Welcome to our second European election debate. We have with us Paul Scully, Vice Chairman of the Conservative Party, MP for Sutton and Cheam. Alistair Carmichael is Liberal Democrat Chief Whip and MP for Orkney and Shetland. Lance Foreman is Brexit Party MEP candidate. And Seb Dance is the Labour's MEP candidate. Now, if you're wondering, well, where are all the other parties? This is LBC bias. We held a first debate last week with 4 other parties, which were the Greens, Change UK, UKIP and Plaid Cymru. And if you're listening in Scotland and you're thinking, well, where was the SNP? We did invite the SNP, but they weren't able to provide a candidate in the studio. So therefore, I'm afraid they didn't take part. Now, let's go to your calls. Sigmund is a first-time caller from Crystal Palace. This is a really good question, Sigmund, if it is what I think it is.
Yeah, so just very quickly, because I know you've got lots of questions to get through. I was just walking home from work today, past the House of Commons, and decided to speak to some people that I didn't necessarily agree with on the subject. So the question that I posed and was posed to me was, I guess, for the Leavers, from the Leave perspective, what's the positive if you don't get what you want and we stay in? And for the Remainers, what's the positive if you don't get what you want and we leave?
That's what I like. Somebody with a bit of optimism, someone that can see the positive in everything. Paul Scully, sorry, go on, Sigmund.
Sorry, and just to say, through my conversation, I was quite buoyed. Just because obviously we hear a lot of different sound bites from people, but it was actually quite nice to have something to at least agree on, that this isn't a simple subject.
Okay, so Paul Scully, if we were to remain, what are the positives for you? Are there any?
Well, I guess we can go back to cooking eggs or something. I mean, we can talk about other stuff, because this has been feeding the airwaves and actually sucking the life out of politics for some time. You can do that. You can clearly have that positive by voting to leave and get into the second stage as well. But I think it is that bandwidth that is frustrating people at the moment.
Because I suppose there are very few people who are so absolutist that they're at either end of the spectrum and can't see any positives from the other. I mean, Alistair Carmichael, can you see any positives from leaving?
Well, Sigmund, first of all, well done you for talking to people that you don't agree with. Because I don't know why, but it's maybe something to do with the advent of social media or whatever, but increasingly we all just seem to live in our own little echo chambers when we hear what we speak to people who agree with us to start with, and then when we're confronted with a contrary view, suddenly it all becomes quite visceral. For me as a Remainer, what would be the positive of the UK leaving the European Union? Well, it's a very thin silver lining in an otherwise impenetrably dark cloud. But I think it would leave us as a country having just to take responsibility for ourselves, because we wouldn't have anybody left to blame. You know, there have been so many occasions when politicians in this country have sought to displace responsibility from what's going on in our own politics and blame the European Union, blame what's going on in the Commission. We'll have nobody else to blame if we end up leaving. It's as good as I can do, I'm sorry.
I think Alistair's point is really important, though, when he talks about, the other sides, because it's interesting. For me, as a Leaver that's voted for the withdrawal agreement 3 times, I've suddenly gone, to traitor from from one side and a right-wing nut job from the other side. It's quite interesting how if you're sitting in the middle, people that have been talking to themselves.
I've just had a wonderful idea for the final 10 minutes of the programme where I get each of you to argue the other's point of view. If we run out of questions, I might do that. Lance Foreman, can you see, if we end up remaining, can you see any advantage in that from your perspective?
Well, I think 2 things. First of all, I personally have a view that the EU has a limited shelf life anyway, because I don't think that the single currency is sustainable, and I think eventually it will end in chaos, and there will have to be some kind of reforming of the...
I'm not hearing anything positive so
far.
EU.
Well, I think it's going to happen anyway, so I think that's a positive thing for Europe. I just think that...
Well, it would be a positive thing for Europe if the EU collapsed.
I do think it'll be a positive thing, because I think the EU is creating huge dangers for Europe, and that is the point here. I spoke in one debate, and I sort of expressed it in football terms. I said, look, in this country we love football, we hate FIFA. We love Europe, and we want Europe to thrive, and people on our side of the argument believe that it's the EU that is creating the dangers in Europe, and so that's from our perspective is why we've been fighting this.
So didn't sound like a positive, but I mean, my positive, I suppose, would be that finally responsibility could be taken by those who advocated this course. So instead of people saying, "Oh, it's the parliamentarians that are screwing up Brexit," or it's whatever, they'll be able to see the flaws in this whole thing, and it will be spelt out for everyone to see, and then that will be a positive thing, I think, for democratic accountability.
I thought you were going to say I could finally get a proper job.
Ooh, ouch. Ooh, that hurts.
Right, it is time for our first Ask Me Anything. Seb Dance is going to take the first three questions from his fellow panellists. Lance Foreman, what's your question for him?
So most Labour MPs, like you, want to remain. So how frustrating or embarrassing is it for you that Corbyn is sitting on the fence when quite clearly most Leave-supporting Labour voters will now be voting for the Brexit Party?
I think the second part of your question isn't true. I think for most Leave Labour voters, the Labour bit is more important to them, because in terms of this election and any other, the polling evidence shows that most of the leakage from the main parties is from the Tories to the Brexit Party. But anyway, that aside, I'm not going to pretend that I don't find the fact that we're not a 100% Remain party frustrating for someone like me who is 100% Remain. Of course that is frustrating, but I mean, ever since 2016 it's been frustrating. It was somewhat frustrating to have lost the referendum, so all of the developments in terms of where we're at have been frustrating, but that doesn't change the fact that I think we're winning the argument. I think we're winning the argument, those of us who want to remain are winning the argument not only with the members of the party but with the shadow cabinet, with the MPs, and I think also with our voters as well.
So Labour is a Remain party as far as you're concerned?
Yeah.
Okay, well I think...
Mostly Remain, but I've answered that already. I've said we're 85% and increasing.
Your Leave supporters should be clear on that. I think that's great.
I as I say, we're 85% and remaining and increasing.
Alistair,
I'm fascinated to know how we get to this 85%. Is this the science of giftology, I wonder?
Analysis.
I mean, look, it's not just a fringe view within the party, is it? Barry Gardiner, your own Shadow Secretary of State for International Trade, says that Labour is a party of leave. He said on television just a couple of weeks ago, we are trying to bail the Tories out on Brexit. Do you agree with Barry?
Well, I mean, you have your own divisions as well, even in the Liberal Democrats Party. I think one of your MPs had to withdraw the whip because he couldn't
resigned
support.
the whip because he had given a particular undertaking to his constituency during the election, which isn't quite the same thing as having somebody like your Shadow International Trade spokesperson.
But you will recognise that obviously with the level of division in the country, you are, with a big party that seeks to represent the entire country, you are of course going to get a difference in views when you look at an issue like this. But the reality is, look, yes, I don't deny the frustration for someone like me. It's a bit of a tussle. Of course, I'm arguing my case. But actually look at what our policy says. It says quite clearly that if we can't get an arrangement with the government that effectively delivers on what was voted for in terms of increasing jobs and increasing prosperity and all the rest of it, then we would put a deal to the British people.
Does it frustrate you that there have been 39 occasions in the whole Brexit process when it mattered that the Labour Party either whipped to support the government in the House of Lords or the House of Commons, or else to abstain?
Well, I mean, we've had 4 times where we've whipped in favour of a confirmatory vote. So, I mean, we've been quite clear in supporting that. So, I mean, yes, there are many things that frustrate me when we take a step backwards in terms of the journey that we're on, but we've taken many more steps forward.
Paul Scully, your turn.
Thank you very much, Seb. How can you, as Labour's manifesto in 2017 said, claim to respect the result of the referendum when you're repeatedly calling for it to be ignored and another one held? Explain how this just isn't about undermining democracy for your own narrow ends.
Sure. Holding a confirmatory vote is not ignoring the vote in 2016 at all. When you're looking at the trade union process, for example, and how change is negotiated, what first happens is you have a vote amongst members which sets out the overall change that people are in favour of. The leadership then go away and they negotiate that change with the negotiating partners. Effectively, that's what's happened with the government process in Article 50. At the end of that, you then have a vote of members to say, look, this is the result of the negotiation, this is what we've managed to obtain, this is what we couldn't obtain. Do you prefer that we proceed on this basis, or would you rather we don't? It's as simple as that.
So presumably, as we're narrowing down options, we've already narrowed down the fact that people don't want to remain, having voted to leave. So the fact that it should be the deal or no deal would be the more appropriate sense in narrowing that down.
Well, those are the two Brexit options, but neither of those are what people voted for in 2016.
Well, neither did they vote to remain, which is the point.
But of all those options, Remain probably has the highest percentage of all of those three options.
And where do you think that Parliament is going wrong? The fact that the Labour Party essentially is split down the middle at the moment, especially with
the middle.
Well, but in terms of the leadership and some of the rest.
Again, our position is quite clear. We support a confirmatory vote if we can't get that deal with the government.
But nonetheless, you've got your two main.
Got to cut you off there. That's the 5 minutes up. We look forward to hearing the Ask Me Anything for the other three candidates in a moment. Let's put this text to you, Lance. Dennis says, why is the Brexit Party not standing for election in Northern Ireland? UKIP is.
The party was formed so quickly. This whole thing came about extraordinarily quickly, and I think a decision was just made that let's focus where we have our strengths, and that's the reason. There's not. We're not trying to ignore Northern Ireland in any shape or form, but everything just happened very quickly, and there really wasn't. I don't believe there was time to find the candidates and so on.
I don't know that the other UK parties stand in these elections. Does Labour stand in Northern Ireland? I don't think it does. Does it?
Well, there's a campaign to make
it. So the Liberal Democrats have a sister party in Northern Ireland, the Alliance Party of Northern Ireland.
And of course the Conservatives did stand for a couple of elections, but I think gave up, got very bad results.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, we will take more of your calls to our panel in a moment. 0345 6060 973. This is LBC. It's 8:15.
This is LBC.
Top marks to the @Uber UK driver who battled the traffic to get my disabled mum home, then messaged to let me know she was safe. #great service. That was a tweet from John Preston. To all the drivers changing the way the world moves, we couldn't have said it better. Uber, where to?
I want to live in a world where we still have polar bears, where we reduce CO2 emissions, where we take climate change seriously.
Smart meters can't solve climate change on their own, but with the smarter, more energy-efficient grid they help to create, they're a start.
I want to live in a beautiful world.
Search I Want a Smart Meter or call 0300 131 5555 today. From the campaign for a smarter Britain.
Calls from UK landlines and mobiles charged at a standard rate. Many people struggle with loose and missing teeth. Often their dentist has told them nothing can be done. Let the TDC team restore your teeth, your smile and your confidence with our award-winning Smile in a Day dental implant treatment. Book your free consultation today. Visit smileinaday.co.uk.
If you started your own furniture store today, you might not call it Fishpools. But if it was $18.99 and your name was Ernest Fishpool, well, it actually was. And he actually did. These days, Fishpools in Waltham Cross is one of the largest furniture stores in the southeast, with a stunning range of on-trend designs. There's up to 30% off in our big birthday sale, but only until Sunday. See it all in-store and at fishpools.co.uk. That's a website, Ernest?
For hundreds of years, Indian food has been about sharing great food with the people you love. For over 5 years, Manjal Restaurant have brought North and South India together in the heart of London. And due to its success, now we've come to Chigwell Loughton. Experience the essence of India and make memories with Manjal. Book now at manjalrestaurant.com.
You've got plenty going on between now and August the 29th, so here's the question. Do you have the time to make a PPI claim before then? If not, don't panic, because here at the Claims Guys, we do have the time and the experience to manage the claims process for you. So if you've got more important things to do than manage a PPI claim, just text ANSWER to 66777. Text ANSWER to 66777 now.
The Claims Guys.
Alternatively, you can complain free to your lender or the Financial Ombudsman.
Choose Swell Heating and you get a lot more than an efficient boiler from top manufacturers like Quista Bosch. There are warranties of up to 10 years, experts to install your boiler, a 24/7 call centre and specialist advice on smart heating technology. Visit swellheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
Iain Dale on LBC.
18 minutes past 8. Lots of you are watching us on YouTube. I'm even watching myself on YouTube at the moment. You can also watch us on our Facebook page, Twitter feed, and on the website at lbc.co.uk. If you just tuned in, we're in the middle of our second European election debate. I should say, for all our listeners in Scotland, by the way, that though we haven't got an SNP representative here for reasons I explained earlier, next Tuesday, Ian Blackford, the Westminster leader at the SNP, I nearly said SDP there, he will be joining us in the studio for a whole hour, so I think that sort of squares it up, doesn't it? In the studio with me at the moment, Alistair Carmichael, who's the Liberal Democrat Chief Whip, MP for Orkney and Shetland. Lance Foreman is a Brexit Party MEP candidate. Seb Dance is standing for Labour as an MEP candidate, and Paul Scully is Vice Chairman of the Conservative Party and MP for Sutton and Cheam. Anne is in Rochester. What would you like to ask, Anne? Hi.
Hi, Ian. Hi. If there was a people's vote, would Remain parties immediately accept a no-deal leave if this was to win?
There's a couple of implications from that question, in that you're sort of asserting that no deal would be on the ballot paper, I guess. Seb Dance.
I mean, the problem that we have, the impasse that we have at the moment, is because in 2016, leave wasn't defined. It was anything and everything to everyone. It was a blank sheet of paper, and my problem with no deal is it's exactly the same thing. It can be, a huge strike forward for freedom. It can be a leap off a cliff. It can all sorts of things that people want to project their
rules,
fantasy.
Isn't it? That's what it is.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not definable. It's not deliverable. It's also not responsible. I mean, if we, for example, went ahead with the Prime Minister's deal, at least you can go and look it up, you can read it, it can be available in every public library, you can weigh it up against what we have and determine what the drawbacks or otherwise would be of that deal. That can then be put in a referendum against remaining in the European Union. Is this deal better than the one we have, effectively? But no deal, putting that on a ballot paper would be the height of irresponsibility.
But surely you can go to the WTO website and look up the rules for trading under WTO rules.
The WTO website doesn't tell you what the scale of job losses will be, what the run on the pound will look like.
There would be job losses.
Yeah, of course there would. It's a nonsense to think there wouldn't be.
But voters were told before the referendum that there would be 800,000 extra unemployed people within months of the referendum.
Well, I think you're quoting George Osborne's figures, and I don't have much truck with George Osborne's figures. Well, we also have a huge number of job losses that have been announced in the last few years from various high profile announcements from firms like Honda. We've heard about Thomas Cook today,
which they said wasn't nothing to do with Brexit.
Which I know is very much to do with Brexit, having spoken to them one-on-one. And you hear about construction projects being put on hold. You hear about investment projects being put on hold, and of course you have virtually.
But that will get worse if you're advocating another referendum. I completely accept your point that the longer this goes on, the worse it's going to get in terms of delaying investment decisions. But there couldn't be another referendum until, I would say, at least the end of the year, maybe even the first part of next year. Yeah, but so it's going to get worse.
Well, if you have the two options of the deal that the government has negotiated, let's say something else comes out of the process between the leaders of the main parties, that could be another option. But whatever you would have a deal and remaining in the European Union, and those are the two options that people can plan against. So the uncertainty, in effect, ends. The uncertainty comes from no deal.
I'm going to have to ask the three of you to be quite brief. In fact, you don't really need to answer this, you two, because it's really aimed at Seb and Alistair. Alistair, what's your view on this?
2016, we voted for a departure. We didn't vote for a destination. If the destination that is going to be put before the people in a people's vote is a no-deal Brexit, as you call it, then yes, of course, that has to be accepted accepted as being a different question from the one that was asked in 2016. And of course, but you would have to accept it. But I think you would have to be very clear, as Seb says, exactly what the consequences of that would be. Because the real problem was, in 2016, we were asked to vote for a concept. In 2014 in Scotland, we were asked to vote on Scottish independence.
Well,
the
that
Scottish
was
government at that point, it was far from perfect, but they did at least produce a white paper. Now, we could talk for the rest of the night about the inadequacies of that white paper, but at least there was something there that people could point to, and they could say, well, this is what we were promised. Brexit was what you wanted it to be in 2016. If you wanted it to be a small government, low tax economy, it could be that. If you wanted it to be for better public services, £350 million a week for the NHS, it could be that. By the time we come to that second vote, that people's vote, we will know exactly what we're voting on.
But WTO,
Lance Foreman.
Yeah, WTO Brexit gives us the most clarity. With Theresa May's agreement, we have no idea we're going because we have this political declaration that hasn't even been negotiated yet. And the other thing is, not only are we saving £13 billion every single year once we've left the EU.
How much are we losing?
Look, none of us have a crystal ball. I think once we leave the EU, I'm a business person.
Great.
And I can explain, I can have a long discussion with you about business and the opportunities and how important or unimportant trade deals are.
Honda, Airbus.
The fact is, we will be saving £39 billion.
No, we won't.
Will. And do you know how much that means to people?
We don't pay in for the sake of paying in. We pay in for the economic benefits that we get out of membership.
£39 billion equates to £1,500 for
do you know what you're
every single
doing? You're doing the £350 million a week again.
I'm not.
That's exactly what you're doing.
Absolutely not.
You're driving a metaphorical bus through this conversation yet again.
£39 billion of taxpayers' hard-earned money. That's
we get far more back in return from the economic benefits of being in the EU. You know full well that all our trade negotiations, all our trade relationships, not just with the European Union but with the rest of the world, are currently negotiated through our membership of the EU. How on earth would you replicate those overnight?
The EU buys
this is
far
madness.
less from us.
How would you deal with just-in-time food delivery for supermarkets?
I'm in the food business, and I have a just-in-time business.
Right now, 5 a.m. I can tell you about it well because I visited the port of Rotterdam. We've spoken to Dutch customs officials. At 5 a.m. an order is put in. At 3 p.m. that then appears on the supermarkets in British supermarket shelves. That is our current model for food delivery. How would you solve that with a no-deal Brexit? Easily.
Because just-in-time isn't about speed. It's about understanding.
It is. The clue's in the name. Just-in-time.
I'm in the just-in-time food business.
Yeah.
So please don't lecture me.
So 5 a.m. till 3 p.m. That's not about speed.
That's not what just-in-time means. Just-in-time means understanding how long it takes to get things from A to B.
Sure. We could go.
To fill in a form. You schedule that into your logistics program.
Sure. You could go from 5 a.m. to 3 p.m. to Tuesday to 3 weeks later. By all means. Fine. And then what do you do in the intermediate?
Sure it takes 3 weeks to fill in a form.
I love the fact you think it's just about filling out a form. I love that. You clearly don't know what you're talking about.
I've enjoyed that argument. I've enjoyed that argument so much. I've let it go on far longer than I should have done because we need to fit in Lance Foreman's Ask Me Anything. But just before we do that, Nigel Farage has been speaking at a Brexit Party rally in Wolverhampton tonight. He said if we can win big next week, a WTO Brexit will be back on the table of Brexit politics and the PM will be fired. Typical rhetoric there from Mr. Farage. Right, Lance Foreman, your turn for Ask Me Anything. Alistair Carmichael, the first question.
In 2016, Nigel Farage launched a poster of a queue of refugees crossing into Slovenia with the slogan "Breaking Point." Do you think, Lance, maybe with hindsight, that poster contributed to the spike in hate crime that followed the 2016 referendum?
Well, let me say two things. First of all, I don't know if you heard last week, but we were subjected to a hate crime ourselves.
I heard exactly.
And, I put my name...
This is your business.
Absolutely. I put my name down as a Brexit candidate. And the next thing I know, there's a 30-foot swastika that's appeared on my building. And this is particularly hurtful for me, because I'm Jewish. My father is a Holocaust survivor. He was born in Poland at the age of 5. He was swept away. He was put on a cattle truck to Siberia, where he spent the war. He had uncles that were literally shot in the town square, uncles that were and aunts that were gassed in the gas chambers. That is hate crime. That is Nazism. That is racism. And when you have politicians like David Lammy sort of accusing people, just shouting this word Nazi and racist, it's ridiculous. If somebody disagrees with you about a customs union or a single market, it doesn't make you a racist. So I think all the language has got out of hand, and I think it needs to tone down.
What about the poster in 2016?
Well, the tone, look, for me,
it was irresponsible politics,
for
wasn't
me,
it?
Brexit
it was demonising people with different coloured skins.
Brexit for me has never been about immigration. I actually have serious concerns, as I described earlier, about the EU and why are immigrants coming to the EU?
No.
Yes.
Answer the question about the poster, because I'm detecting in your hesitation that you actually don't think it was a very good poster to put up.
Look, it might not have been the tone that I personally would have used. I'm sure they would have gone to some sort of PR company and asked, what is going to give us the biggest impact. People have different views. I'm sure they probably discussed a few different things. That wouldn't have been my personal tone.
So what you're saying, the end justified the means?
No, I think immigration is a management issue. It's not, I think British people are one of the most tolerant people, not only in Europe, in the world. I think we are really tolerant people here, that we welcome immigrants into this country. So I think the issue is a management issue. And as I said to other people before, I have a restaurant. It seats 70 people. If 100 people showed up one night because they wanted to get in, I wouldn't hate the 30 that couldn't get in. I'd love them. They want to come to my restaurant.
Okay.
The problem is there's not the space.
Interesting analogy. Paul Scully.
Thanks, Ian. Lance, the results in the election aren't going to change the maths in the House of Commons. Aren't you just galvanising anger and playing on understandable frustration, frustration, albeit understandable, when you've got no role in actually delivering a Brexit after the election?
Well, I think that we are hoping that once the House of Commons has seen the frustration of the people expressed in this vote, that they will start to have a rethink. I don't believe that the people voting for Brexit have a problem with a WTO Brexit. It's the cleanest way to move forward. And we are hoping now that there might be a new leader in the Conservative Party and somebody that can sell the message. I think the biggest problem here
Who do you hope that is?
Well, it has to be a lever. I was interviewed the day after Theresa May put her hat into the ring, back in 2016, and I was asked who do I think should be leader of the Conservative Party, and what I said was that I don't know who should be leader, but I can tell you who shouldn't be leader. It shouldn't be Theresa May for 2 reasons. First of all, because she was silent pretty much throughout the whole campaign, and if you want to lead, you can't be silent. You have to express what you think and hopefully carry people with you. And secondly, and more importantly, she never believed in this thing. You cannot sell something if you don't believe in it.
It's time for a question from Seb Dance.
Your campaign is centred on democracy as you see it. How can it be democratic to advocate no deal when the Leave campaign specifically promised and deliberately promised a deal that would be better than remaining?
I'm afraid you've only got about 45 seconds.
Look, David Cameron went to the country before the referendum, and he said to the country, he said, look, I've been over to the EU. I've tried to negotiate a deal with them. The deal that they've offered us is pretty awful, and so I'm going to put it to you. Do you want to leave? On the basis of there not being a deal. There was no deal. There was no deal. People rejected the best deal that he could do, and people were happy to leave on the basis of no deal.
I'm afraid your time is up, Lance. Coming up in the next few minutes, Alistair Carmichael will be answering questions from the rest of the panel. We'll take more of your calls as well. 0345 6060 973. It's 8:32. News headlines with Rachel Gerrish.
Theresa May is going to set out a timetable for when she'll stand down as Prime Minister. She'll meet the 1922 Backbench Committee early in June to work out the details after MPs vote again on Brexit, while former Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson's confirmed he will run to replace her. A UK-registered light aircraft has crashed near Dubai Airport, killing 4 people. There were 3 British nationals on board. Another was from South Africa. We are just hearing from Met Police that a man in his 20s has been stabbed in south-east London. Officers are at the scene on the Grange in Bermondsey. They are waiting for an update on his condition. LBC weather largely dry for most of the UK tonight. Maybe some mist and fog in eastern Scotland and northern England. Showery rain moving westwards with a low of 5 degrees.
This is LBC.
This is a luxury escape to Barbados. Snorkeling in beautifully secluded bays, enjoying pristine sandy beaches and savouring locally caught seafood. This is the ultimate USA road trip, taking in the Pacific coast, verdant canyons and national parks bursting with wildlife. These are travel bag holidays, packed with 40 years of experience. To book, visit us in store or at travelbag.co.uk.
The feel of hot rubber on tarmac. The smell of petrol in your nostrils. High-quality adventures need high-quality tyres. Michelin tyres. Tyres that run for miles. Tyres that fun for miles. A tyre that makes other tyres cry when they look in the mirror. The type of...
Yeah, we've only got 30 seconds. That'll do.
For long-lasting performance, choose Michelin tyres. Available from the experts at QuickFit. Get a free tyre safety check at your local centre now.
Imagine getting all kinds of rewards just by going about your everyday shopping. Earn points every time you spend, then use your points to get the things you actually want. Filling up at the petrol station could lead to getting your hands on the latest fashion. And supermarket checkout could even take you to airport check-in. Use points to get whatever it is you want. Let's make life more rewarding with the American Express Preferred Rewards Gold Credit Card. Don't live life without it. Representative 57.6% APR variable. Annual fee applies after the first year. Terms apply. 18 plus, subject to approval. Search Amex Gold.
The real reason Sleeping Beauty fell asleep was because it was taking so long for the palace to sell, and the handsome prince needed the proceeds to buy their new home with no time to dwell.
I know who can help. Property Rescue. I'll contact them straight away.
So he spoke to their friendly team who took care of every detail. They bought the palace direct with no legal fees to pay. Fast forward to living happily ever after. Visit propertyrescue.co.uk. Property Rescue. Fast forward to sold.
At Wix, right now, our 25-litre bag of topsoil is only £2, and 50-litre bag of multi-purpose compost is just £3. Hurry, offer ends Monday.
Right now at Vodafone, enjoy 4 times more data on the brilliant iPhone XR and other pay monthly phones. Get more tunes pumping, get more FaceTimes rolling, get more apps apping, more maps mapping, more emojis emojiing, and more box set binging in stunning HD.
That's 4 times more data with 60 gig for the price of 15 on a range of pay monthly phones, including the brilliant iPhone XR. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone. For terms and exclusions, see vodafone.co.uk.
Just had one of the best Uber rides ever with this guy. Went out of his way showing me all the sights of London. Literally the best. Hashtag superstar service. That was a tweet from Hugh Roberts. To all the drivers changing the way the world moves, we couldn't have said it better. Uber. Where to?
Iain Dale on LBC.
8:36. Do watch us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube and on our website at lbc.co.uk. Paul Scully from the Conservatives, Alistair Carmichael from the Liberal Democrats, Lance Foreman from the Brexit Party and Seb Dance from Labour are here to take your calls. I nearly went to the wrong one there. Robert is in Camden. Hello, Robert.
Hello.
What's your question?
Basically, I want to ask what their understanding of the word leave is, because my understanding of it is if you leave a gym, you stop paying your membership fee and you stop getting access to the facilities. And David Cameron said leave means leave.
Right, well, it's a very...
I'd like to ask them what their understanding of the word leave is, because clearly some of them have it completely wrong.
There is one definition of the word leave in the Oxford English Dictionary. What's your definition of the word leave, Paul Scully?
It is to leave the institutions of the EU, but you've got to bear in mind we've been in there for 40 odd years, and so there is nuance. It's not a sledgehammer, because you know this is what we're doing at the moment. It's going through the divorce. You then got to work out the future relationship. If you divorce someone, you can walk out overnight. You might not see your kids again. How is that going to work? You need to therefore, have a sensible discussion between husband and wife in that instance. In this instance, it's actually between the institutions. It's between trading partners and all of those kind of things. So there are intricate things involved in here, and so that's why the withdrawal agreement talks about leaving the political institutions. It stops the membership fees, the ongoing membership fees. It allows the end of freedom of movement of people. What it does do, though, it gives a soft landing for the businesses that we've been talking about, so that eventually we can do our own independent trade deals.
So leave means, in your view, sort of 50% leave?
No, it doesn't. It's a lot more than that, because
70%.
actually what we're ending up with in the withdrawal agreement, the only thing that we're not able to finalise within the withdrawal agreement itself is the ability to finish and do implement our independent trade deals.
Lance Foreman, I expect a 10-second answer here from you.
Leave does actually mean leaving everything. Once we've left, then we can start a new relationship with the EU. If they choose to have a free trading relationship with us, which I would like to think they would, because they're forming trade deals with Canada and Japan, so why not with UK, fifth largest economy in the world?
Seb Dance.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that no one can agree what leave means is the strongest argument, or a strong argument certainly, for putting this to another vote on the fact that you would have something definable and deliverable versus remain. Because at the moment, what we are trying to do, to use Robert's gym analogy, is effectively still use the facilities and not abide by the same rules that everybody follows, and certainly not to pay the gym membership fee. And of course that's not possible. And the reality is, from everything in this studio, from the Fuse standards to the water we're drinking, to the fact that the mugs we're drinking from, very nice global mugs, that they don't collapse and disintegrate from us, those are all standards that we'll still have to sign up to.
I don't think they did before the EU came about.
No,
I think we still have mugs.
But consumer but that consumer standards and the food that we eat and the water we drink and the products we buy and the guarantees that come with them, all of that has come about, the consumer safety and protection has come about through European legislation, and it will still be there even when we leave.
Have you examined the cleanliness of those mugs?
Oh, they're amazing. They're amazing.
But Seb, we've been in business for 115 years.
Yeah.
70 of those years.
You didn't have the internet 150 years ago.
No,
you wouldn't rip up your internet connection
70 of those years we weren't in the EU because it hadn't been
you
set
didn't
up.
have electricity.
We never poisoned anyone then.
Inside toilets.
You can let me speak, or
of course. But I mean,
carry on. You carry on. No, you don't listen. No. You don't want to listen. If you want to listen to me, then fine.
I'm just refuting your argument.
You're not. You're not even having a chance to listen.
Let's go to Alistair Carmichael.
Robert, look, your question is only part of the question, because we're all grown-ups. We know what leave actually means. But in politics, the question we should be asking is, what does leave mean for our economy? What does it mean for our ability to export? What does it mean for our younger people? And, when you look at what it means for our economy, it means that our economy will shrink. It will be smaller. And the harder the Brexit, the bigger the shrinkage of our economy. What does it mean for our exports? Well, Lance processes salmon that's grown in my constituency in Shetland. He's not actually told us yet what the export tariffs are going to be on that. So it's going to mean that for the people like him who are processing that salmon, and for the farmers in my constituency who are growing it, it's going to be that much more difficult. And for our younger people, the opportunity to move freely across Europe, this great single market, the educational opportunities, the opportunities for our universities, for research partnerships right across Europe, that is
Can I answer that question?
No, you can't, because we're going to our next Ask Me Anything, which is, strangely, to Alistair Carmichael, and you're asking the first question, Lance.
Alistair, how many of the 34 million who voted in the June 2016 referendum didn't know what they voted for, and can you describe that person?
I'm sure they all knew what they thought they were voting for. But as I said earlier, they were asked to vote for a concept.
To know that?
No, of course they weren't stupid. that's a ridiculous thing to suggest.
Well, it's not, because that is something that is often said,
just let me explain this, Ian. There were any number of different reasons as to why you might choose one side or the other. And I've told you already, some people thought that they were genuinely voting for £350 million a week for the NHS. I think they would probably say now that they know that is not going to be the case. Other people probably thought that they were voting for some sort of Singaporean economy without the sunshine. I think they must now surely be a bit disappointed as well. But whatever it is, whatever they thought, now that we know what it is they're going to actually be offered, that is the point at which it should go back to the people. And if you say, as you do, Lance, that this is about democracy, then you shouldn't fear that, because if what they're being offered is what they voted for in 2016, then I'm pretty confident, because I don't think they're stupid at all. I think they'll vote for it again. That's the risk.
Yeah, I don't fear it, but that's not the point. It shouldn't need to be done. In the European Championship, if Spurs happen to beat Liverpool, should Liverpool
here?
But it's the same principle that you lost.
There's an element.
You cannot. If Liverpool said, we believe in football, let's have another match to see whether we really lost.
Well, you'll probably find that there will be another championship next year.
Let's go to Paul's question, because it's kind of on this.
Yeah, because I think they won't ask for £350 million a week, because the government didn't wait, and they've given them £390 million a week to the NHS in expectation of leaving the EU. But the question is, your leader Vince Cable previously described a second referendum as seriously disrespectful and politically utterly counterproductive. Do you seriously believe that people who voted to leave didn't understand that undoing the 40-year relationship would take time, care and compromise?
I think that Vince, like an awful lot of people, has seen how this issue has emerged over the last 3 years now almost. And I speak to people all the time who say, this isn't what I was promised, this isn't what we were told. And that is why, as it has gone on, when we first suggested that we should go to a second referendum in July 2016, there was virtually nobody with us. Now we've got to the point that you've got 700,000 people prepared to march down Whitehall in support of it, 295 MPs already backing it in the House of Commons. And that's not an accident. That is because people can now see what Brexit actually means for them and for their jobs, and that is why they should be given the opportunity to say, yes, we voted for departure, but now we know the destination. We are entitled to have our say again. Democracy isn't just about an exercise in having a vote, it's about accountability as well. And that's where your argument, I'm afraid, Lance, falls flat in its face.
Well, no, look, if people have...
This is not your time in the spotlight. Seb.
Thank you. Alistair, how much responsibility do you think Liberal Democrats should take for their time in government for creating the conditions, particularly by supporting austerity and cuts to public services, that led in large part to many people voting for Brexit?
I think that the economic crash in 2008 is a symptom of a broken political system. I think that Brexit is a symptom of a broken political system. I think if you go back to 2003, the then Labour government committing troops to an illegal war in Iraq was a symptom of a broken political system.
But it wasn't public spending that caused the 2008 crash, which is what you argued along with your coalition partners.
In 2008, the economy crashed because we had been mismanaging it for years.
But not
Labour and Gordon Brown and Alistair Darling. And you talk about austerity. Let's not forget that the cuts in public expenditure that happened between 2010 and 2015 were exactly of the level that Alistair Darling envisaged in his March budget in 2010.
And you think supporting the Conservatives' austerity programme was a good idea to rectify the wrongs of 2000?
I think that in the 5 years of coalition government, we did a tremendous number of good things in very difficult circumstances. We introduced things like the pupil premium, so that people going through the state education system who came from the poorest of families were given the support, the extra help that they needed. We were able to cut the tax bills of people who were right at the bottom of the economic food chain. Do I think it's austerity, as you call it, which was exactly what your party was suggesting in 2010, has had an impact? Of course it has had an impact.
But
principally because people in the Labour Party have never been prepared to take their own share of the responsibility for it.
Thank you very much, Alistair. Someone from Wales has texted in, great debate tonight. Can we have a representative from Plaid Cymru too? Thank you, Diolch. sure I've pronounced that wrongly. Well, we did have a debate which included Plaid Cymru this time last week. If you missed it, which you clearly did, you can watch it back on the LBC YouTube channel. It's there. 90 minutes of fun and games for all the family. It's 8:46.
James O'Brien, Monday to Friday from 10 a.m.
Why do we have to do Brexit? Because we voted for it. Why did we vote for it? Because we want it. Why do we want it? Because we voted for it. And what these men have done, they have reduced us to an infantile state.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
This week you'll find great deals on new digital radios, in-store and online, at participating retailers.
Find out more at getdigitalradio.com.
Love radio. Go digital.
Do you or a loved one forget things or occasionally struggle to find the right words? At St Pancras Clinical Research, we're looking for people with mild cognitive impairment or Alzheimer's disease to take part in a drug study. Participants must be aged over 55 and have someone who can help them with the study. All volunteers will be paid for their time and reasonable expenses. To find out more, visit stpancrasclinicalresearch.com. That's stpancrasclinicalresearch.com.
Right now at Vodafone, enjoy 4 times more data on the brilliant iPhone XR and other pay monthly phones. Get more tunes pumping, get more FaceTimes rolling, get more apps apping, more maps mapping, more emojis emojiing, and more box set binging in stunning HD.
That's 4 times more data with 60 gig for the price of 15 on a range of pay monthly phones, including the brilliant iPhone XR. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone. For terms and exclusions, see vodafone.co.uk.
Second time an @Uber driver has found my wallet. Forever thankful for honest people in the world. Good karma for sure. That was a tweet from Leighton Williams. To all the drivers changing the way the world moves, we couldn't have said it better than Leighton. So thank you. Uber. Where to?
At Wix, right now, our 25-litre bag of topsoil is only £2, and 50-litre bag of multi-purpose compost is just £3. Hurry, offer ends Monday.
The feel of hot rubber on tarmac. The smell of petrol in your nostrils. High-quality adventures need high-quality tyres. Michelin tyres. Tyres that run for miles. Tyres that fun for miles. A tyre that makes other tyres cry when they look in the mirror. The type of...
Yeah, we've only got 30 seconds. That'll do.
For long-lasting performance, choose Michelin tyres. Available from the experts at QuickFit. Get a free tyre safety check at your local centre now.
Nothing says the flavour of Italy more than pizza, especially if it's from the new range of Co-op Irresistible pizzas made with even more authentic Italian ingredients. From Parma to Puglia, the very best of Italy goes into them, with bases made using an Italian sourdough passed down through generations and topped with a delicious San Marzano sauce made from 3 varieties of tomato for a richer, sweeter flavour. Best of all, visit Co-op today and you can pick up any 2 for just £8. Selected pizzas subject to availability. See participating stores for details.
Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's 10 to 9 here on LBC. Some very entertaining texts coming in, mainly from people who do seem to live in their own little echo chambers, who I was going to say slagging off, but that would be a bit rude, criticising the panellists that they obviously totally disagree with. Right, it is time for Paul Scully's Ask Me Anything. Seb Dance, what's your question to Paul?
So the psychodrama in the Tory party has led us to Brexit, and any successor to Theresa May will face the same choice that she faced, essentially between remaining close to the EU and following its rules, which you earlier said was necessary, without say, or distancing ourselves from our main trading partners and facing substantial economic damage. Which would you choose?
My choice is to have a deal which actually allows us to have as frictionless trade as possible. But I would be, personally, content with, never happy, but content with no deal. I do agree with what Lance said right at the beginning. As long as we've tried everything we can do to get a deal, I agree with what Lance says, actually, that if we did end up leaving with no deal, as long as we were prepared for it, then actually the EU would come back and we would be able to secure a deal relatively quickly.
It's a 16%
but there would be short-term. There would be short.
Northeast.
There would no. I think what you're actually
those are your figures. those are the government's own figures.
But what you're actually looking at is a protracted no deal process, which I think actually, as I've just said, that I suspect if we left with no deal properly prepared, then we'd actually come back. The negotiating teams would come back and actually secure something longer lasting,
Do you
relatively
not think the
quickly.
EU would just demand what's already in the withdrawal agreement?
But the withdrawal, well,
they demand the 39 billion. They demand the backstop.
Well, that's sort of part of the thing. I'm happy to support that. I'm happy to support the withdrawal. I've supported it 3 times. I'll be happy to support it.
So let's go for no deal and have a withdrawal agreement anyway.
4th time. The point is to get a deal if we can get there, so we can leave with a soft landing in an orderly and leave with an orderly fashion, as I said throughout the programme.
And if we don't leave in that way, it's a disorderly landing.
Well, short term it would be. It would be. I mean, the longer that we had to prepare for it, the better. But and I'm hoping that listening to the reports that Steve Barclay, the Brexit Secretary, has started to ramp up no deal preparations again for possible 31st of October leave.
I apologise. I should not have intervened there because it's down to you, Alistair. Your turn.
Boris Johnson, Michael Gove, both campaigned for leave in 2016. Boris Johnson now says that Theresa May's deal is not what he campaigned for. Michael Gove, on the other hand, says that it is. Now, they cannot both be right. Does that simple fact alone not illustrate why the people should be given their say on whatever Parliament ultimately agrees?
I've said right the way through the process of each of the 3 times the withdrawal agreement in its various forms has come in front of us that Parliament has lost its collective head, as I said, because you had a situation when you had the likes of Boris and Jacob Rees-Mogg in the same voting lobby as Anna Soubry.
That's the Conservative Party. That's not Parliament. It's not quite the same.
Well, as I was going to say, as Anna Soubry, they were actually in the same voting lobby as you. So therefore, you cannot both be right. So clearly, that's what I mean about Parliament losing its head. But no, if you're talking about a people's vote, if you're talking about putting it back to the people, the quickest way of leaving is to actually get a deal across the table, because otherwise you would be the first people to say that the first referendum was divisive, it's causing uncertainty. I tell you what, let's do it again. Let's wait 9 months so we can get the question sorted out. Let's get the franchise sorted out and then do it again. All you're doing is delaying investment decisions. You're creating uncertainty for businesses and
so
citizens.
Let's push
that
it all
actually,
off the cliff now.
No, what we need to do is politicians to do the job that they were elected to do.
Well, I was elected on a manifesto that said we should have a people's vote. That's what the Liberal Democrats are doing.
But 85% of the electorate voted for the 2 main parties who actually said we were going to leave the single market and leave the customs union.
Well, maybe they'll think better about it next time.
Okay, Lance Foreman.
Okay, so this is not a debating question. I genuinely want to know the answer to this question. I know that many other former Tory Brexiters would do too. So, is Theresa May incompetent and naively being led astray by the likes of her chief advisor, Ollie Robbins, or has she been deceptive and never really wanted Brexit and put forward such a bad agreement in the hope that we'd all lose the will to live and just give up on democracy?
Short answer is no. I don't know how many of my 5 minutes I've got left, but no.
No to which? Is she deceptive?
No, she's not deceptive and she's not incompetent, because look, there is 585 pages of agreement there that can get us across the line tomorrow.
It's the worst agreement in the world. Nobody wants that agreement.
It's if I voted to leave the political institutions of the EU, it allows us to do that.
It doesn't until the EU says we can leave. We cannot leave until they say we can leave.
I voted to leave to stop the membership payments. That stops. Freedom of movement stops. We can negotiate our trade deals. We can ratify the trade deals. We can't put them in place. Now, if you then look at the backstop, that's just as uncomfortable. We've been really bad at selling the idea about why the backstop is just as uncomfortable for the EU as it is for the UK, because politically it's really difficult for the DUP, legally it's very difficult for the rest of the EU, and economically it's actually very difficult for the EU.
Thank you very much. We've only got about 4 or 5 minutes to go, so let's go straight to another question from Robin in Whitehaven. Hello, Robin.
Hello, Ian. It's a 3-part question, and I hope all 3 of the panel will be honest. First part is, who do the panel think the next leader of the Conservative Party should be? The second part is, will the next leader of the Conservative Party have a legitimate mandate to lead the country? And the third part is, the Conservatives have got the right to change the leader, so they can have a vote on who they want to replace Theresa May. Why can't the country have another election and then we can choose who we want the Prime Minister to be? Because I think it's pretty wrong how you can elect
treat him like he was a Remainer, and the country knew she was a Remainer. Now I think it's bad that the Tories are going to replace her with a Brexiteer.
All right, well, let's see if we can get through those. Seb Dance, who do you think should be the next leader of the Tory party, or don't you give a damn?
I don't give a damn in the sense that I think the Tory party's finished. I think Brexit has destroyed them. I think taking on this poison chalice was always going to do it. I have no idea why Theresa May decided that drinking from it would be beneficial to her. But I completely agree, Robin. We should have a general election. Absolutely.
Really? I'm really surprised by that.
Because, I mean, this government has run this country into the ground. It is embarrassing, frankly, internationally, to see our reputation in tatters because of this whole process. So, yes, we need a general election.
Paul Scully.
I don't yet have an opinion on who should lead the party. I've spoken to a number of the contenders actually, and I've been asking them each the same question. But the point is, what I'm concerned.
None of them have impressed you.
No, a lot of them have, but there's nothing finalised. But nonetheless, what I can't do is worry about 6 weeks of the party talking to itself when we need to be talking to the country. But what does worry me is when Jeremy Corbyn himself says actually there's nothing in the withdrawal agreement that he disagrees with. It's the political declaration, which is actually part of the next part of the negotiations anyway. Well, it is, because it's what he's talking about is customs union, these sort of things, which is the political declaration, which is the next stage of talk.
There are things
so my concern is, if a general election, what we're doing, and if you vote for the Brexit Party, for example, you're actually helping the Labour Party come through and have Jeremy Corbyn getting that little bit closer to number
Carmichael.
10.
Who should the next leader of the Conservative Party be? Frankly, I neither know nor care. It's like saying, would it have made a difference to change the captain of the Titanic after it had hit the iceberg? You were still going to the bottom of the ocean.
Who should the next leader of the Liberal Democrats be?
Well, I'm not giving a view on that because I'm Chief Whip, so I'll maybe share my thoughts with you after the election.
So does that mean you're ruling yourself out?
Oh, I've ruled myself out multiple times, many times.
I think you'd be a very entertaining leader of the Liberal Democrats.
You may well be right, but I don't think entertainment value is necessarily what the party should be looking for.
I don't know.
Would they have a legitimate mandate? Give the people the vote, and yes, they'll have a legitimate mandate.
Lance Foreman.
Who should the next leader of the Tories be? I don't think it really matters, but it just needs to be somebody that really, truly believes in Brexit. If you don't believe in it, you can't sell it. So I think that's absolutely crucial. About another election. This is really interesting. I think the next election won't be on traditional right-left lines, and I think it'll be based on Leave Remain. And, if the Brexit Party get even 75% of those 17.5 million votes, they will sweep the board. And I think people are so frustrated with the political class at the moment that the fact that they're just constantly stifled, they can't make decisions, and having this new party along that's bringing in people that have real life experience, that have actually been in business, academia, coming from all walks of life, that aren't tainted by what's gone on in the last few years, could be really uplifting for people and give them immense hope, and you might just see the Brexit Party sweep through.
So if you don't want professional politicians, are you getting rid of Nigel Farage then?
Well, Nigel Farage has never been he's never been an MP.
He's tried several times.
He's tried often
enough.
Well,
he has tried, and maybe now is the time.
He's been in the European Parliament since 2005.
Well, we're not going to look into Nigel Farage's future. Our time is up. Thank you to all four of you for being with us over the last 90 minutes. Paul Scully, Alistair, Carmichael, Lance Foreman and Seb Dance. If you missed any of it, it's available right now. You can watch it back on the LBC YouTube channel. Just go to the website and click on the link. You can also watch our first debate with the Greens, Change UK. Who were the other parties? Plaid Cymru and UKIP. That was from last week. That's on the YouTube channel. And also my interviews over the last few weeks with the likes of Nigel Farage, Andrew Adonis, Sian Berry and several others too. We'll also have a leading Conservative with me on Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on LBC, and Ian Blackford, the Westminster leader of the SNP, next Tuesday. You can't say we haven't had all our bases covered. In the next hour, Boris Johnson has said today that he will definitely run for the Tory leadership. Could he be the man to rescue the Tory party?